In January 1987, police raided a corrugated metal warehouse in Hesperia, a remote desert town inhabited mostly by veterans and located in San Bernardino County, about 70 miles northeast of Los Angeles. The owner, David Sconce, told locals he ran a ceramics workshop and claimed to have made tiles for NASA space shuttles under the name Oscar Ceramics. Police were shocked to find a mud pit outside with liquid human waste mixed with soil and canisters inside with human ash, bones, and partially burned body parts. When they opened one of the massive diesel-powered kilns for ceramics, a human foot fell out, still burning. Watch our video to learn more about the morbid case that shook America in the late 1980s. Share, like, and comment on the video. For more crazy stories, subscribe to our channel. The warehouse was part of the Lamb family funeral home, which had been in operation since 1929 and was used as a crematorium by the founder's granddaughter, Lori Ann Lamb Sconce, and her son, David Sconce. Officially, David operated Coastal Cremations Incorporated, which worked with funeral homes in Los Angeles that didn't have access to a crematory. Unofficially, he used the family business to do more business selling organs on the black market, but he was not alone in this. In 1985, David and his supportive parents, Lori Ann and Jerry Sconce, founded the Coastal International Eye and Tissue Bank to help David legally trade organs. In a 3-month period between 1985 and 1986 alone, the Lambs sold 136 brains, 145 hearts, and 100 lungs to a company that supplied medical schools with organs for research. At that time, brains could be sold for about $80, hearts for $95, and lungs for $60. When consent to the removal of body parts was not given, David's mother forged the signature of a family member. The bodies were housed in an elaborate refrigeration unit that Sconce called a cold room, where he and his well-paid team, which included a medical student he had recruited from a tissue bank, cut rings off fingers and removed organs, ripped out eyeballs and stuffed them into Coke cans and paper towels. They used a crowbar to break open chest bones to remove organs. At trial, David's cash-paid employees told gruesome stories about how Little Hitler, as they called David, enjoyed cracking chops, as he called pulling gold teeth, which he sold for an extra $6,000 a month to a company called Gold, run by one of his friends. He used a flathead screwdriver to pry open the jaws to get at the gold fillings, a process he called making the pliers sing. And for practice, David lifted bodies wrapped in cardboard and carried them through the facility. The Cremation King of California, a title given to him by journalist Ken Englade, also had a wry sense of humor. He drove a Corvette with a license plate that read, "I burn for you." David became Cremation King by offering the service for less than half of what was then considered the industry standard. At only $55 per body, he now offered lower prices than any other crematory in the region, if not the entire country. Business flourished, and between 1985 and 1986, Coastal Cremation's gross income from cremations exceeded $1 million. Probably someone born into David's morbid circumstances, where he grew up surrounded by corpses, the smell of burnt human flesh, and weeping families, all the while watching his mother receive clients with large packages of tissues and make up dead corpses, perhaps always saying how important it was to beautify a corpse for their appointment with the Creator, as she kept telling the judge and the media. Probably someone else could respect death, but loving son David, failed college soccer player and college dropout, casino dealer, and field hockey stadium usher, who could not pass the police eye test because he was colorblind, proved to be a psychopath. The crematorium's ovens operated 24 hours a day, as David Sconce repeatedly loaded them to the limit of maximum capacity. Under state law, only one body could be cremated at a time, which took several hours per body. The body was cremated, then they had to wait for the oven to cool, collect the ashes, and clean the oven before moving on to the next body. Sconce's employees burned between 5 and 18 bodies at a time per furnace. They then dumped all the ashes into huge barrels. When it came time to collect the ashes for the families, employees were instructed to collect 3.5 to 5 pounds for female remains and 5 to 7 pounds for male. By 1985, Coastal Cremations was burning over 8,000 bodies per year and had only 2 furnaces. On November 23, 1986, the nearly century-old facility burned to the ground after David's employees somehow shoved 19 bodies at a time into each of the ovens. This was not the end. David simply moved the operation to a metal warehouse he had already purchased in Hesperia. Under a ceramics factory license, he burned bodies in the facility's massive brick kilns until the fire chief made a grisly discovery in January 1987. A neighbor complained about the air quality because of the terrible smoke emitted by the furnaces around the clock. When told that it was only a ceramic factory, he exclaimed, "Don't tell me I don't know what burning bodies smell like. I've been to the ovens at Auschwitz." Deputy Fire Chief Will Wentworth examined the factory and found that everything there was covered with soot and the garbage cans were filled to the brim with ashes and prosthesis. David Sconce was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 1989 for mutilating corpses, conducting mass cremations, and having his employees beat up 3 rival morticians. Yes, David hired many of his old soccer buddies as thugs, not only to transport and handle the bodies, but also to intimidate funeral directors into cooperating with coastal cremations, and to terrify and beat up anyone who might uncover their misdeeds. While serving his sentence, he narrowly escaped being charged with the murder of the owner of a local crematorium, even though David had openly bragged to his minions that he'd mixed deadly oleander, which grows throughout California, into the man's drink on the day he died. But the charges couldn't be sustained because 3 toxicologists couldn't agree that oleander was the cause of death. The state helped him one more time during his much too long career. In California at the time, there were only 2 state inspectors overseeing the funeral and cremation industry. And although they suspected something was amiss, every time they tried to inspect the facility, they were turned away and told to come back with a warrant, which was difficult to obtain because all of Coastal Cremation's paperwork made everything seem legal. To make the fake Oscar Ceramics company appear official to the small community of Hesperia, David and his cronies also set up a telephone line that they connected directly to a nearby telephone pole and stretched a long cable to a receiver on the dashboard of a car from which they took calls. David eventually served only 2.5 years of his sentence and was released in 1991. His sentence carried a life sentence of probation, which he violated several times, including selling forged bus tickets in Arizona and attempting to pawn a stolen rifle in Montana. When he was extradited to California for parole violations, he pleaded guilty to hiring a hitman to kill another rival and was sentenced in 2013 to 25 years to life in prison. His parents, Lori Ann and Jerry Sconce, then 55 and 58, retired and living penniless in Arizona, came to Pasadena Superior Court in 1992 to stand trial for their involvement in the conspiracy, specifically falsifying authorization forms for harvesting organs from dead people. These acts were committed by her son David, Lori Ann's defense attorney said in his opening statement, describing the mass cremations and the theft of gold teeth. It happened without her permission or knowledge. It has resulted in a great tragedy for them, for a third-generation business, and for the families of the deceased. During questioning, the couple accused their son of being involved in the cremation conspiracy. 36 charges had already been dismissed before the trial, and the couple was acquitted of 3 charges while a mistrial was granted for the other 6. 2 years later, however, 34 of the original charges were reinstated by a state appeals court. And in 1995, the Sconces were convicted on 10 counts of unlawfully authorizing the removal of eyes, hearts, lungs, and brains from corpses prior to cremation, and sentenced to 3 years and 8 months in prison each. The Lamb Funeral Home building in Pasadena was sold to another funeral home in the mid-1990s. When that venture failed, the building sat vacant for several years. We hope you learned something from the creepy story of the worst mortician in American history. And if not, you can always read 2 books titled Chop Shop and A Family Business that have been published about David Sconce's business. Like, share, and comment on the video. Subscribe to our channel for more spooky stories.